Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hello, piano teachers. Thank you so much for joining me today. This month at Top Music, we are talking about teaching beginners, which is something that I really enjoy doing, and I especially enjoy all of the creative aspects of it. If you have listened to my original podcast, the Dynamic Piano Teaching Podcast, the whole premise of that show was exploring all the fun ways to teach students, which meant we talked a lot about beginners. My guest today is Michelle Sisler, and she is also a lover of piano teaching tools. And she's going to be sharing some of the most popular games and resources from her company, Keys to Imagination. But we also talk about technology and how teachers can incorporate technology into their piano studios. I think you're really going to enjoy today's episode. Michelle Sisler's use of technology, creativity, and presentations have gained her national recognition. Along with teaching 30 students per week, Michelle is the founder of Keys to Imagination, LLC, and musicedconnect.com. She's a favorite presenter and is frequently sought after for presentations across the nation. Michelle serves on the technology committee for NCKP and has served on the technology committee for MTNA and the Minnesota Music Teachers Association Foundation Board of Directors. She has written articles for Clavier Companion and American Music Teacher and is an active author of technology curriculum, engaging theory games, and motivational programs. In 2023, Michelle was honored with the Francis Clark Center Outstanding Service Award. Here's my interview with Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here talking with us today. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about your business?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So I am a private teacher in Minnesota, and I've been teaching piano for probably over 20 years. And I started Keys to Imagination as a way for teachers to add technology and off-the-bench games and activities to their studios, really to make them fun and effective like I was doing here. And through that business, I've been presenting and exhibiting at conferences for, again, probably over 20 years. And this is how I met Sally Ritchie. And Sally had a business publishing games, and I first met her when I bought her games. I absolutely loved them, was a big fan. She is a brilliant game designer. And so we would room together at conferences and became close friends. And then we decided to combine our businesses, and Keys to Imagination became the publisher of her games. And so we really make a great team because she comes up with the game concept, and then I get to design what the game's going to look like and make it happen.
Very interesting. Okay, so I didn't know all of that backstory. Can you just give us an idea how long was that process from like meeting Sally, going through those conversations, and then to actually starting Keys to Imagination?
That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure how long it was because I remember we roomed together first in Texas, in Houston, and we were both selling our products through our own companies, and then we eventually combined them so that we became her publisher. We've been together for probably 15 years, though, so it's been a while.
Okay. So I love your products. I think I first came across it. One of the teachers who works for me in the conservatory here had the little letter blocks that it's just the musical alphabet on little square blocks, like 3D blocks, I guess. I should let you describe it. But it has sharps that are black and then just the regular white note key names. And I just thought they were so clever. And I was like, where did you get these? And I think I looked on the bag or something, or I think I Googled it and eventually found Keys to Imagination. So that was my first introduction. I met you at NCKP last summer, and I came back to your booth probably, I don't know, like 5 times because I was trying to decide what I wanted to bring home with me. And I have to tell you, there's one little spinner game. I think it's called Space Race. My 5-year-old piano student wants to play that game every single week. So now he's like, how many more things do we have to do before we can play Space Race? How many more things? Okay, we've done 2, so we still have to do 4 more things and then we can play the game. Like, he loves it.
That's awesome. I know those are new. And I've got a lot of kids too that ask to play that too, even when they're really good at their keyboard geography.
Yeah. And it really is perfect for him because he's still learning. Like, he can count up A, B, C, D, F, G, but he's still learning how to find a D on the piano or how to find an F without counting all the letters. So it's perfect. It's a little game, just so our listeners know, where you start at the base with your little marker, you spin, you get an F, you move to an F, and then you take turns and go up the keyboard. So do you have some favorites from your store that you want to share about?
That's a really good question because it depends on what I'm teaching or what I'm trying to reinforce. So if I was working on keyboard geography, the spinners, you pull those out. That's an easy game. The kids love it. I think one of the games I use the most in my studio is Notewordy. And I think it's because all of our students need help with note recognition. And I always want to make it easier and more fun for my students. And I think sometimes for me too, right? So I've seen incredible progress with Notewordy. And so in Notewordy, they have to use their cards to spell their word on their game board for their opponent. So all of the cards have either key names or notes on the staff. So they're learning how to do both of those. And I find that students that struggle with identifying notes need more time off the bench working on this concept. And so I've really found that if you take those students that are struggling with notes, or even if they just need a little bit more work on them, take them off the bench, do a game. It really lets them concentrate on just the notes instead of everything else they're trying to do at the same time, whether it's rhythm or fingering or all of those things. And so that's been a really good way to work with them. But one of the things that I like with working with students too on games is that I get a window into what they're thinking. So they could be figuring out notes on the staff. And I said, oh, I see I see where you're going wrong, or that's not quite right. So it's really a good way to even assess what they're doing and what they're thinking. And when I'm playing this game, sometimes it takes students a while to figure out the notes, right? So you might feel like, oh, I'm wasting a lot of time. But you know what? If they take that long to figure out the notes, it's probably the game you need.
That's really good insight. Yeah, one of the things that I hear from teachers a lot is it's so hard to fit everything in to 30 minutes. There's no time for games. So can you address that a little of how I don't know if you teach 30-minute lessons, but I'm sure you've heard that from teachers as well. And what would you say to those teachers?
So I do have 30-minute lessons. All of my students actually have a 30-minute lesson, 30-minute lab. But the 30-minute lesson time, I do hear that from teachers all the time. I don't have time for games. I only have 30 minutes. But as we just talked about, if you take that lesson time and you use some of it effectively to play a game, that is part of their lesson time. That is how they're going to gain that skill. And I can make so much more progress in a lesson, pulling them off the bench, working on a game, than sitting on the bench, struggling through a song, for example, if they just need a certain skill. And so, the games that we have can take anywhere from, 5 to 10 minutes, and they can all be modified to fit lesson time. But it's really through the games that I use this lesson time more effectively to reinforce, whatever concept we're working on. And I think that, not only am I using the time effectively, but now the students are like, oh, I'm starting to get this. I'm starting to figure this out. And they leave really encouraged and really happy.
And they have fun. And so they start to associate piano lessons and playing the piano as a fun activity where, rather than just hard work, right? So we're talking right now at Top Music about teaching beginners. So I would love for you to share a few of your favorite beginner games.
So beginner games. So we have a wide range of games that range from beginner all the way through advanced concepts. And so some of my favorites for beginners are probably the Notewordy game that we talked about, maybe level 1, maybe level 2, depending on your students. I think another favorite is Rhythm Riot. We're working with those beginning students on keeping a steady beat and some basic rhythm patterns. And Rhythm Riot is another one of those games that has beginner levels, but then it goes all the way through level 6 and gets into things like 6/8 time and half time. But I would say Rhythm Riot is one of them for beginners. If you've got really young beginners, or you want to work on terms and symbols with your beginners, things like Legato Lake, which is a terms and symbols, like a blackout bingo style game. They have to catch all their fish to win by learning the terms and symbols, or even triple threat tiles with the terms and symbols. So I'd say that, the note reading with Noteworthy, the Rhythm Riot for rhythm, terms and symbols would be Legato Lake or triple threat tiles, and maybe even Space Place to work on those interval patterns.
Okay, not to be confused with Space Race, right?
Right.
And do you use your games all the way through with your intermediate and older students as well?
I do. And, I have a student, we were working on key signatures. And so we were playing triple threat tiles. And in triple threat tiles, they have to match the key signature with either the major name or the relative minor name, or the major name and the minor name could actually be matched together. So there's always 3 ways to make a match. And so this game is a little more challenging. They have to think a little bit with these key signatures and they have to figure it out. And I thought, this one student was struggling a little bit figuring it out. And he comes back to the lesson the next week and he says, I think I figured this out. Can we play that again now? And I thought, if you've got students coming back to ask to work on scales and key signatures, you've won.
Totally. And the fact that he left there thinking about it and trying to problem solve over that week before he came back, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you have advice for teachers about choosing games?
I do. I've got a list of things that I think teachers should think about when they're getting games. So first, does the game effectively teach the skill that you want to teach? If you think about some of the games, and I've got a couple of these where they cover multiple concepts. So you draw a card, and if you get a blue card, you might have to name a note. And if you get a yellow card, you might have to, clap a rhythm or something like that. But what I found with a lot of those games is the students weren't working on what they needed work on. The students might be drawing all rhythm cards, but maybe they didn't need work on rhythm. Maybe they really needed to focus on note identification or something. And so think about, what do you need to work on? And all of our games are designed so each one targets a different skill at multiple levels. So you can find the skill and the level that you need to teach. So then you're not wasting those valuable 30 minutes, although it might be fun. So thinking about, can the game be adjusted for different ages and levels? Are the graphics appropriate for the age or the concept you're teaching? Does the game give all players a chance to win, or does it reward only the faster players? I think this is a big one for me. We've played those games where you hold up a flashcard and the student who gets it, answers it first gets the flashcard. But that has been a problem because the students that need the work never get the work. And the students that are really good at it always get the cards. And then the kids that aren't very fast just give up, right? So think about, can everybody have an equal chance of winning? And that includes if the teacher and the student are playing together. I want that student to know they can honestly beat me. And I don't want them to give up without trying. Think about, is the game attractive and durable? What are your students going to think of that? Does the game require printing or laminating, assembling, or purchasing additional parts? And if, we do all that for you. Like, we have professionally printed games that are very durable. I still have my original games from 20 years ago that I bought from Sally. But just factor this into your time. We all have limited time and money. And so that's a good way to use yours the best, right?
Yes. And I will say as well that your games seem really durable, really high quality. And I appreciate that. Sometimes we print stuff off and then it's crinkled in the corner after a couple of weeks. So yours are not that way at all. So it sounds like you use these with multiple students. Do you have groups you use them with and also individual lessons? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So all of our games can be used one-on-one with students. So it can be a teacher and a student, it can be two students, or it can be in small groups, usually like 4 to 8 players. So in my private lessons, I use them all the time with my individual students. But then if you have like a studio class or a holiday party, or in the summer, for example, we go off the bench and we do group lessons in the summer. That's a great way to use them with those groups as well.
Great. If you don't mind, could you share just briefly about your summer group lessons? Because I know teachers are always trying to figure out what to do in the summer. And I'm curious what you do.
Yeah. So in the summer, I need a break, students need a break. And I really wanted a way to target these individual skills. And what I found I've been 23 years. And what I found over the time is that students don't practice very much in the summer anyway, no matter how much I ask them to. And so I designed a program where they come 6 weeks for 2 hours a time. And so usually they come like twice in June, twice in July, and twice in August. And we focus on individual theory skills. So one day we might have mostly rhythm, or one day we might mostly have note reading. And we do this through the games. And then we also have been using Paula Manwaring and Tiffany Horrocks have a really great summer splash camp. And so we've been adding that to this as well. And so through those summer lessons, the students are really making those basic skills very solid. And what's interesting to me is then they come back in the fall and I'm like, wow, where'd you learn to count so well? Or where'd you learn how to read notes so well? I'm like, oh yeah, we did that this summer. So
that's great. So it's 2 hours, like from 9 to 11 or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever you want to set up for a schedule. And I usually have 4 to 6 kids in a group, and I group them by age and level.
Okay. So are you assigning the groups rather than them choosing? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
That way we can kind of work on, similar level concepts or similar concepts, or what does this group need to work on?
Yeah, that's really smart. Since you mentioned summer camps, I noticed in your store that you guys also offer some summer camps. Can you just give us a brief overview of what you have available?
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought we have several camps, but I thought maybe I would highlight just a couple of them. One of them is our World Music Camp. And I know inclusion and diversity are really important. Well, they always have been important, but it seems like it's a really important topic right now.
Yeah, it's coming to the forefront more, I think.
Yeah. So as music teachers, we really have that opportunity to share awareness with our students too. And so we have a really great world music camp that explores 6 different countries. It explores their cultures, their instruments, their music, and it's all done for you. So you do not have to be an expert in world music like I am not. Dr. Deborah Brenner wrote all the text for us, decided what was going to be included, made sure everything was done exactly how it should be done. So this is going to be a PowerPoint style presentation filled with text, videos, listening activities, questions to keep students engaged. If you wanted to do it as a summer camp, even crafts could be included. And then there's also a coordinating piano book, so students can actually work on those songs on the bench too. And the other one that I wanted to mention, we talked a little bit about because I used it in my summer program, was the summer splash camps that Paula and Tiffany have been writing. They have been holding camps in their studio for years. And I was really excited that they're like, hey, we're going to publish these camps. I'm like, great, I get a new camp that's all done for me. And a lot of their things are outdoor activities, a lot of water activities. And so we tend to do this. Well, I live in Minnesota. The weather, you can only do it in the summer. You can't really do this in the winter. But in the summer, and the kids they love it. They love it. Parents are writing me saying how much how much the kids learn, how much the kids enjoyed them. So they actually have 4 camps out right now. One is rhythm, one is treble clef notes, one is bass clef notes, and then the newest one is on chords.
That sounds so fun. I'm going to have to look into those, definitely. So it sounds like you have a really great team working with you. Is that?
I do, yes. We have a lot of great teachers. I cannot do all this myself.
Do you want to share who's on your team?
Sure. Well, everybody, yeah, we have a big team that writes different things. So Sally Ritchie writes our games, and we have Dr. Deborah Brenner wrote the World Music Program, and Paula Manwaring and Tiffany Horrocks wrote the Summer Splash Camps. And then we have, I'm going to forget somebody, I'm sure, but we have a lot of things that come into our marketplace, which are individual teachers that have created products, like those blocks that you mentioned earlier. So those were written by Chris Wolf. She's a teacher in Minnesota here. And so there's lots of people that write things and send us things to help them market and bring to like conferences and things like that.
Okay. I didn't know that. That's really cool. Are there any, I want to go back to games just real quickly. Are there any games that your students request all the time that are fan favorites?
Lately, it's been those spinners that you mentioned.
I don't know what it is. It's so simple, but they just love it, don't they?
Yeah, they really do. I think it depends on the age and the level, but it seems like Spelling Bee has been a favorite lately. Spelling Bee is a note identification game with a little bit different strategy where points are scored for completing words. And then Harmonic Hike has been really popular lately too. And that is one where students are using playing cards with enharmonic spellings to build major scales, minor scales, intervals, chords, all of those things.
Okay, that sounds like a good one. I'm not familiar with that one. So when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, I discovered that you are also really big into technology. So I thought, since I have you here, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit about using technology in the studio. And first of all, I'm curious why you think it's valuable. I'm assuming you think it's valuable to use technology in the piano studio.
Yeah, I do. Since my studio has started, my students have had a 30-minute lesson with me and a 30-minute lab. And if you have students that need a little bit longer lesson, maybe they do a 45-minute lesson and a 15-minute lab or something like that. And I've done a lot of conference sessions on how to set up a lab, how to make this work, things like that, because I do feel like it's very valuable. So during that lab time, they're working independently while I'm teaching another student. And they could be working on things like rhythm or ear training or music history or things like that. And it really gives them a chance to reinforce what we're doing in lessons and practice those concepts. And I think that even when they get things wrong and the iPad is correcting them, that's still learning. And nobody is there to tell them it's wrong, right? It's a computer. They're like, okay, it's wrong. And they move on. And so for me, it actually expands their lesson time and it kind of helps me out, right? As I talked about with the games, I love working with my students because I can guide their thinking. What are you doing? What are you thinking? Let me help you. But the lab is really nice too, because that also extends their practice time, or their lesson time, working on rhythms, maybe, for example, working on intervals or things like that. And so it's really given me some tools to help teach various learning styles and really giving the students instruction at their pace, right? They can work how fast or slow they want.
Can you speak to the teacher who is a little hesitant, I guess would be the word, to use technology, maybe because of their own insecurities, or, you talked about the value, but maybe they don't see it as the right fit for students, or they don't want to, add that on. Can you talk, where should they start and how would you speak to that mindset?
I think that's a very valuable question, because I think that as a teacher, we feel like there's so many things we're already doing, and everything that we have to do, we have to learn ourselves, right? And so if you're thinking about, wow, I would really love to have a technology lab, but I'm not tech savvy, I don't want to deal with that. I think my best advice was to, first of all, think about, what do you even want to accomplish with it? Do you want students to work on rhythm, let's say? Do you want them working on listening activities? Pick one thing that you could maybe do in a lab. So maybe it's just an app. Maybe you pick one app to start with and see how that goes and go, okay, I got that one down. Now let's add another one. Or what else can we do? Otherwise, I think it can be very overwhelming.
I think that's really smart. And when you were talking, I was just thinking you could start really short too. Like you could just have it be 5 minutes after their lesson. You wouldn't even have to necessarily charge extra or anything. Just they stay for an extra 5 minutes and do this. And then gradually, as you become more comfortable as the teacher, you can turn it into something a little more involved.
Right, right. And you brought up a good point about charging for it. If you decide to add a lab, make sure you charge for it.
Yes, for sure. And there's costs, of course, that come with setting up the lab and whatever. I'm just speaking to teachers who might be hesitant and maybe they just want to have one iPad that they use with a couple students or to kind of test it out a little bit. At what level do you introduce technology to your students? Is it as soon as they start lessons with
The
you?
first lesson. Yeah, the very first lesson they're coming in.
Wow. Can you tell us, since we're talking about beginners, tell us what sort of things they would do at those first few lessons for their lab time?
In the very first lesson or two, it depends on if they do their private lesson with me first and then their lab. And some do it first because I have 2 students come per hour and 30 minutes are with me and 30 minutes are on the iPad and then they switch. So some will end up doing their lab first and some will do it second. But I would focus a lot on rhythm and feeling that beat. So they might be working on an app like Rhythm Swing, just kind of tapping out those rhythms, listening and feeling that beat. They could also be working on, there's some apps out there that are really good with like music history or music appreciation or creating music, really get them excited about piano lessons and creating. And then as you get into, let's say, notes on the staff and things like that, there's much more that they can be working on too.
Do you have any favorite apps that you would like to recommend?
I can tell you what my students like the most. They probably like, they love Ningenius. They love Rhythm Swing. Saving that monkey from the crocodile has been really important to them. They love the Most Addicting Sheep game, which is really good for rhythm. It's not about rhythm reading. It's more about feeling the beat. But I would say those 3 are probably the top ones they want to do.
Do you find that your kids are excited about the lab time?
Yeah, because they're like, I want to do lab first.
Speak to the teacher who maybe is a little more experienced. Maybe they do have some iPads and they've kind of dabbled in technology. Do you have any maybe hidden gems that you could recommend or ways that they could level up their technology game?
Yeah, I was thinking about this and I thought of a recommendation that's maybe not so much app-based, but I did a series for some conferences that was called Google Can Do All That. And it's really an advanced series on using Google to level up your studio, like a little bit more advanced. So you might be doing things like Google Forms or creating worksheets or creating drag and drop worksheets or interactive things. So I think if anybody's interested in that series, if you just go to our website, keystoimagination.com/register, you can just register for that. It's a free series. You're going to get an email with the links. And that might be a way for you to take your technology up a notch.
That sounds like a really great resource. I think I need to check it out because I could definitely level up my Google game.
I like that title, Level Up Your Google Game.
You can take it. I don't mind. So you mentioned your website. I was looking at your website, and one thing that I really appreciated is that you have some teaching videos on there. Can you talk a little bit about that resource and how it's helped teachers?
Yeah. So what we did is Sally and I have been teaching combined probably 70 years, right? She's been teaching over 50 years and I've got about 20 years. And so we created these 10-minute teaching tips videos to share some ideas that we have found effective with our students. Our business is really about helping students be more engaged, help the teacher make it a little bit more fun in the studio. And so these 10-minute teaching tip videos will just give you some ideas for off-the-bench learning. And it could be tips for note reading. It could be tips for intervals. It could be tips for rhythm. So just a way for us to share our experience.
That's a really great free resource for teachers. Thank you for sharing about that. I have to ask you, I read in your bio that you taught piano on a cruise ship, and I have never heard of that. I've heard of people performing on cruise ships, but I've never heard of teaching piano on a cruise ship. Can you just share about that?
Yeah, that was so cool. That was really the trip of a lifetime. because I had gotten the call and asked if I wanted to do this program. And the ship left from London and I got off in Rome. So we toured the Mediterranean. So I was on the ship for 2 weeks teaching piano, and it was really teaching adults. And it was more of an enrichment activity. And it was kind of challenging because as teachers, we're like, okay, you need to know this and then this and then this. And there you're like, okay, we're just going to do it, right? So it was a little bit different to teach that way.
Yeah, because you have 2 weeks and you want them to feel like they've accomplished something, right? But it's a really short time.
Yeah. So Yamaha actually put this program together. So they gave you the curriculum. They had designed it. Here's what we know works. The goal is that they should have fun, right? Think of it as a cruise ship activity, not a piano lesson. And so I just had to follow their curriculum, but it was different. But we only taught on the at-sea days. And so on all the other days, I got to go explore, and it was really quite a gig.
Yeah, that's a really unique experience. Fun to share about at parties, I'm sure. Can you tell us, is there anything new on the horizons that teachers should be looking out for?
We just released a new game at MTNA in March called Lead Sheet Lab. And that was so popular, we sold out. So I think that might be something that if you are looking to work on chord symbols and reading lead sheets and things like that teachers could look into. It's really a unique game because it's a teaching tool and a game all in one. So students will be drawing chords on the staff and the keyboard on a dry erase game board. And then they have to take turns to acquire the cards to build the chords to win the game.
Gotcha. That sounds like a good one. I know teachers are interested in, students are interested in learning to read lead sheets, and therefore teachers need resources to teach that. That's a really good one. Well, Michelle, it has been so great talking to you today. Thank you for sharing about your games and resources and so much knowledge with us here today. Can you tell listeners where they can find you?
Our website is keystoimagination.com. So keys like piano keys, to, which is TO, imagination.com. And if you have any questions about anything we mentioned, you want some advice on, hey, I want to add some games, what do you recommend? Just contact us through the website and we're happy to help you.
Great. There's a contact form on the website, correct? Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having us.
I hope you found this episode valuable. I know that as piano teachers, we don't always have the resources to buy loads of teaching tools. But like we talked about in the episode, the games and resources from Keys to Imagination are ones that you will use over and over with your students. I really encourage you to check them out. I also want to let you know about a free webinar that is coming up. Tim is going to be hosting an exclusive webinar during which he will unpack pop songs and demonstrate how you can teach them to students of all different levels. He'll take 2 songs and use the Pop Song Solutions approach to provide you with practical insights and strategies for teaching pop music to students from beginners all the way up to advanced students. Head over to topmusic.co/webinar to get the details and sign up for this value-packed webinar. That's the end of the show for this week. I'm Rachel Ehring, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I will talk to you next time.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.